Kales.
We're ready. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Moore,
Here.
Mr. Gillis,
Here.
Mr. Pollock,
Here.
Ms. Hughes. Here. Mr. Sheridan.
Here.
Mr. Wright is absent, and Mr. Lopez is absent.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez wanted me to let you know that he had a business commitment come up at the last minute and had to leave on short notice. If anyone has their cell phones with them, would you please make sure that they're turned off during the meeting? Thank you. Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from September 11, 2012. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Sheridan, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. Is there any discussion?
No, ma'am.
Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment. If there's anyone here wishing to speak to the board during this time. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Next item on the agenda is public meeting items. Resolution number 2610-12, deviation for 1077 West Broadway Street. Do we have the applicant here? Will you come to the podium, please? State your name and address for the record.
Thomas Skelton, American Civil Engineering Company, 207 North Moss Road, Suite 211, Winter Springs.
Thank you. Now you want to tell us about your project?
Okay, I don't want to repeat anything the staff is doing. It's a Dollar General store located on the southwest corner of 426 and Chippendale Terrace here at the signalized intersection. And what we're requesting is to have what we're required in order to get site plan approval, a right-in, right-out driveway placed at the northwest corner of the property here. And the deviation request is because the distance from the center line to the center line of the intersection and the center line of the driveway and the center line of the next driveway they're short of the code requirements. So we're here to ask for the deviation to allow that driveway to be put in. There's a couple reasons, main reasons why. One is for mobility through the site. We also have an access down here at Chippendale Terrace coming out here, but it would give us a through movement through the site without having conflicts of traffic backing up for not only the patrons but also emergency vehicles would be able to get through the site easier. We're also asking for the deviation as part of the agreement that we had made with the adjacent property owners that we would try to not eliminate, but reduce the amount of impact to Chippendale by placing a driveway here for movement in and out of the site. And we're here to answer any other questions you might have.
Are there any questions of the applicant? Thank you. Can we hear from staff?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. This is a request for the Planning, Zoning and Appeals Board, PZ8, to consider two deviations to the City of Oviedo Land Development Code requirements. The first is a request for a 130-foot deviation to the 330-foot minimum center line to center line distance requirement between non-residential driveways on arterial roads per LDC Section 11.3 H4B to allow a non-residential driveway to be located 200 feet center line to center line from other driveways. The second request is for a 115-foot deviation to the 330-foot minimum center line to center line distance requirement between non-residential right-in, right-out driveways and intersections on arterial roads per LDC Section 11.3 H4F to allow a non-residential driveway to be located 215 feet from the center line intersection of Broadway Street and Chippendale Terrace. The applicant is William C. Lloyd, RKM Development Corporation. The owners are Ollie B. Daves, Arthur Daves, Janice Boston, and Joetta Jackson, and all. I have here a bigger plan for the board if you want to take a look at the distances of the two deviations. Highlighted in yellow, just to recap, this distance here is for one of the deviations, and it has to be 330 feet, and actually it's 200. And the other deviation is in relation to the distance of the same driveway to the intersection of Chippendale and State Road 426. Both of them are less than 330 feet. So these are the two deviations that are being requested. Okay? The Land Development Code establishes that any deviation greater than 30% has to be considered by DRC, PZA, and City Council, and also shall require the execution of a development agreement between the applicant and the City Council. So these two deviations, both of them are more than 30%. One is 39%, which is the deviation from the distance requirement between non-residential driveways on arterial roads, and the second deviation is a 35% deviation, which is the deviation of the distance from the driveway and the intersection. Okay? The subject property is located at 1077 West Broadway Street in the corner of Chippendale Terrace and Broadway Street. You have a location map as attachment number 1 if you want to take a look where it is. And the property encompasses 3 parcels, as you can see in the map. We had this request analyzed by both the city attorney and the city transportation consultant besides staff. And I will now present to you all the criteria that they have to meet in order for us to recommend approval. We had the DRC meeting held on last Thursday, and I'll talk about that when I talk about the mitigative techniques. So there are 7 criteria that we have to analyze. The first one is the existence of special conditions. In this specific site, there are, I'd say, 3 special conditions. One is that the frontage of the property to Broadway Street is actually less than 330 feet. It's 191.83 feet. The second specific condition is that the location of the existing office building to the west of the property prevents this subject property to obtain cross-access because of the location of the building in relation to what they are proposing, where their driveway would be. So that's not possible to be attained. And the third condition is that City Council adopted resolution number 257112, which is a preliminary development order requiring the applicant to provide a right-in, right-out access point on Broadway Street. So that's another reason for the request for those 2 deviations. The second criterion is the compatibility. The addition of a driveway connection directly on Broadway Street will actually reduce the traffic generated by the retail store on Chippendale Terrace, so reducing the impact of the traffic to the subdivision which is located on the south side of the property. The proposed driveway on Broadway Street will also be a right-in, right-out type access, so it's not going to have a bigger impact on the property on the west side of the subject property. I will talk about the third item is proper use of mitigative techniques. I will talk at the end of this report. So the fourth criteria is the protection of environmentally sensitive areas. In this proposal, the deviation supports the location of the driveway on Broadway Street and supports the protection of existing canopy trees on and adjacent to the site. There are 2 very big trees that are on the site that are being preserved. The fifth criterion is the only minimum deviation granted, which it is. That's the minimum that they need to be able to have that driveway in that location. The open space and other facilities criterion, and it's not applicable to this particular request. Number 7, which is existing of non-conforming uses of other property, were not a basis for approval, which is correct. So the recommendation for approval was not based on any other type of similar situation. And other information is you have on attachment number 2, which is the reasoning that the applicant has presented for requesting these 2 deviations. So I'd like you to refer to the supplementary report that we provided to you today. That was done because we had the DRC meeting after we sent the staff report to PZA. And this is to update you on their recommendation. So the memo, the meeting was held on Thursday, November 8, 2012, regarding this resolution, resolution number 26-1012. The DRC considered the subject deviation and recommended some changes to item number 5, which are conditions of approval, which is the page number 5 of the non-statutory development agreement. These changes, actually I reproduced the language here on your report with strike through and underline. So the conditions of approval, the first one is that the driveway shall be designed using proper channelization to prohibit the appropriate movements associated with a right-in, right-out driveway, and not rely on just signage. The DRC recommended the addition of the following language, that the driveway design shall not restrict the access of emergency apparatus to and from the property. The second recommendation, DRC just added some language, and I read it in full for you. The eastbound approach to the Broadway Street, State Road 426, Chippendale Terrace intersection shall be restriped to have a through lane and a right turn only lane that drops at the intersection. There is a space to do this today, but eventually it will need to be restriped as a two-way through right once Broadway Street is widened to 4 lanes beyond Pine Street. The third recommendation, there were some strike-throughs and underlines. I will read the final text for you. The bidirectional center turn lane on Broadway Street adjacent to the project site shall be converted to be an eastbound left turn lane only to Pine Avenue, and DRC added, utilizing such measures to ensure that the subject driveway is right-in, right-out only, found to be acceptable by the Florida Department of Transportation and does not prohibit full access to the adjacent property to the west of the subject property. So after we had the meeting with the DRC on Thursday, staff coordinated a second meeting with FDOT and city staff and the applicant to check with FDOT what would be acceptable for them to do. So that's, we have here a summary of what FDOT recommended. Per FDOT review of the subject area, a 4-foot mountable traffic separator to be constructed in the middle of Broadway Street in front of the subject parcel to guarantee the enforcement of a right-in, right-out only turn on that segment of the road was found acceptable by FDOT. So we asked the applicant to provide a depiction of what that would be, and that's what you have in that board.
Do we have an easel? I'm sorry, do we have an easel where we can put that up, where we can see it?
Just for you to see here, you can see that here in red there is a divider. It that comes until here. So this is going to be a left turn only. Okay, and people leave the property to not be able to go left because of this physical barrier here, so it will go right. Because of this divider here, our second, one of our recommendation that was to restripe this lane here to be a through lane to go through and right turn only. We don't have the space to do that. So that's one of our recommendations. That's why we have a third recommendation, which is staff is recommending to take out that lane. And I will read now to you. So I hope that you could follow my explanation here. So what staff is recommending as a result of that meeting is that, and you have, again, condition number 1 was not changed. Condition number 2 is being completely deleted because we cannot have this restriping and a dedication of a right through lane and right turn lane. And condition number 3, we added to the end of the sentence that the owner will construct a mountable traffic separator on Broadway Street west of the project driveway to Pine Avenue in Chippendale Terrace to prohibit left turns into and out of the project site onto Broadway Street, and will install right turn only signage on the site at the Broadway Street driveway. So these are the final recommendations that we are providing to you as a result of the DRC and the meeting that we had with city staff, FDOT, and the applicant. So our recommendation is that the PZA recommend adoption of resolution number 261012, approving the requested deviations and incorporating the above changes to the non-statutory development agreement as recommended by DRC and staff. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff?
Thank you. The term mountable traffic separator is used by staff, and it appears that the suggested changes would be a concrete barrier. Is there any way to differentiate whether this recommendation will be something that's mountable or movable versus concrete? I'm envisioning orange and white barriers out there.
I believe that the applicant can answer that.
When we resubmit the plan to DOT, DOT has already issued the permit. We have to modify the permit now. It will be called out as a concrete mountable curb or mountable concrete median. It's the kind with the curbs that have the slight change where the emergency vehicles can drive over, but people should not.
Thank you.
So you can't.
Are there any other questions? Okay, what's the board's this is a public meeting. Okay, what's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sheridan?
make sure I do this right. I'd like to make a motion to recommend adoption of resolution number 2610-12 with the recommendations of DRC and staff as presented to us today.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Pollack, thank you. Is there any discussion?
No, ma'am?
Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This item will be considered by the City Council at their meeting when?
At the 19th of November.
November 19th at 6:30 in these chambers. Thank you.
Good night.
I found a typo.
Where was it?
It was in the resolution, there's 2 page 2s. Yeah, the last page of the resolution, down at the bottom.
The last page of the resolution?
Yep, the resolution,
Okay.
yeah, should be
Yes,
page
there's
3.
Page 2.
I'm sorry? Of the resolution itself. Yeah,
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We will make that correction.
okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is ordinance number 1550, the comp plan amendment. The item after that is ordinance 1551, zoning map amendment. Both of these involve the same property, so staff, you want to make a presentation as to both of them together?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have the applicant here? Would you come to the podium, please? State your name and address for the record.
My name is Dwight Sadoff, and my address is 5535 Osprey Isle Lane, Orlando, Florida 32819. I apologize, too, for walking in a little late. There was an accident on 408. I was afraid I wasn't even going to get here, but just wanted you to know I was trying to be on time.
Can you tell us about your application tonight?
Well, this staff report, I think, or 2 staff reports lays it out in, very accurately and very comprehensively. If you look at a map, this 9 or so acres is really about the last piece on the south side of 434 that's not in the city of Oviedo. And this, for us, is part of a little bit larger project. We have the property across the street as well, some of which is already in Oviedo, already zoned, and all we have to do is do the PSP on it. And we also have, to the west, the staff report mentions that there's a piece, pretty much the R1 zoning that we're ultimately trying to get is what virtually everything around here is zoned, especially on 434, adjacent to us on the west. We also have the piece to the west. I can't recall the acreage. I think it was about 3 acres that the city of Oviedo actually owns, and it's in the city of Oviedo already zoned the same zoning as we're seeking. We have that under contract as well, so ultimately that becomes part of our project as well. And certainly be happy to answer questions that you either have now or that might come up. It's been a lot of work. We're in 2 jurisdictions, Winter Springs and Oviedo. Fortunately, the 2 cities are working together very closely, and it's actually been a pretty good experience. It's been a great experience here. Your staff is phenomenal, and we appreciate the DRC recommended approval unanimously, and so far so good. So, all right.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant? Thank you. Deborah?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a request for the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board to consider an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan future land use map to change the future land use designation of approximately 9.79 acres from Seminole County low-density residential to the city of Oviedo low-density residential. The property consists of approximately 9.79 acres and is located on the west and south side of 434. The applicant, as you have just met him, is Dwight Sadoff. Comprehensive Plan Policy 1-1.4 requires the city to evaluate the criteria that's listed in your staff report. The results of this evaluation is found in your staff report. At its Thursday, November 1st, 2012 meeting, the Development Review Committee recommended adoption of the proposed Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map to the City Low-Density Residential. On October 22nd, 2012, City Council adopted Ordinance 1549, which annexed the subject property into the city's limit. The purpose of the amendment is to designate the subject property with the city's low-density residential future land use designation. The requested future land use map merely functions as a change of jurisdiction. The subject property will be combined with an adjacent parcel, which Mr. Sadoff just mentioned, which is owned by the city, already designated with the city's low-density residential future land use designation in R1 zoning to create a 21-lot, single-family residential subdivision. The current zoning district for the subject property is Seminole County A1, which is agriculture. So concurrent with the future land use map request, the applicant has filed a zoning map amendment for the same property from A1, Seminole County, to the City of Oviedo R1 zoning district. The proposed low-density residential future land use designation is consistent and compatible with the existing Seminole County future land use designations, surrounding land uses, and with the city's strategic plan. The City Council will conduct a public hearing on the subject future land use map amendment on January 14, 2013. It is recommended that the PZA recommend adoption of Ordinance 1550. As I mentioned, concurrent with this future land use map amendment, there's a request for change of zoning, which is Ordinance 1551. This is a request to amend the city's official zoning map to change the zoning of the same property from Seminole County A1 to the City of Oviedo R1. The applicant wishes to designate the subject property with the R1 zoning district consistent with the proposed future land use designation and surrounding zoning districts. At its Thursday, November 1st, 2012 public meeting, the Development Review Committee recommended approval of the proposed zoning map amendment to the City R1 residential. The City Council will conduct a public hearing on the subject zoning map amendment on Monday, January 14, 2013. It is recommended that the PZA recommend adoption of Ordinance 1551. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Okay, this is a public hearing item. If there's anyone here wishing to speak to the board at this time on this item, seeing none, we'll close public comment. What's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sheridan.
I'd like to make a recommendation to adopt ordinance number 1550.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Pollack, thank you. Is there any discussion?
No, ma'am.
Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we've heard the presentations on ordinance number 1551. We'll open that one up for public hearing. If there's anyone here wishing to speak to the board on this item. Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. What's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sheridan.
on that same note, I'd like to make a recommendation to adopt ordinance number 1551.
I'll second it.
Mr. Pollack, thank you. Is there any discussion on this item?
Good.
Seeing none, we'll close, or we'll take the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda, I'm sorry, this will be considered by City Council at the January 14th, 2013 meeting, 6:30 in these chambers. Good luck.
Have a good night.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is ordinance number 1556, amendments to the Land Development Code.
Madam Chairman, thank you. This is a request for the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board to recommend approval of amendments to the Land Development Code, Article 6, Downtown Mixed-Use Regulations, specifically to Section 6.4 and Tables 6.4 and 6.9 relating to the new downtown development and redevelopment districts. On March 5th, 2012, City Council found Article 6, Section 6.4 of the City of Oviedo Land Development Code to be ambiguous relative to drive-through restaurants and directed the city staff to propose an amendment to Article 6, Section 6.4 Land Development Code in order to remove the apparent ambiguity. The city attorney provided an opinion confirming the ambiguity and inconsistency as to the City of Oviedo Land Development Code, Article 6, Section 6.4 F3A, and Table 6.4. the city attorney opinion is included as an attachment. City staff and city attorney worked together to create ordinance number 1556. The ambiguity and inconsistency was caused by the fact that while Table 6.4 included in the prohibited column the language, all uses not specifically listed as permitted uses, implying that all uses not specifically listed as permitted would be prohibited, Section 6.4 F3A stated that uses other than those specified in Table 6.4 permitted and prohibited uses in the new downtown Village Court District shall be permitted if found by the City Council to be similar and compatible to the specified uses and in compliance with the downtown master plan, opening for opportunities for applicants' requests directly to City Council to allow for particular uses not specifically listed in the permitted column. In order to solve the ambiguity and inconsistency found in the Land Development Code, Article 6, Section 6.4 F3A and Table 6.4, staff revised Article 6, Section 6.4 F3A and B, Table 6.4 and Section 6.4 G3A, B, and C, and Table 6.9. Moving to page 4. The proposed changes allow for removing the ambiguity and inconsistency found by City Council by deleting the sentence, uses other than those specified in Table 6.4 and Table 6.9 shall be permitted if found by the City Council to be similar and compatible to the specified uses and in compliance with the downtown master plan. From both Section 6.4 GA and Section 6.4 F, A, and B. We also included a list of uses in the prohibited column of both Table 6.4 and Table 6.9 to make it clear the specific uses that do not comply with the principles set forth by the downtown master plan. And here I'm just going to add that we didn't change or add or removed any uses. We just made it more clear. So these were uses that were already prohibited by Article 6. We also clarified that prohibited uses will not be allowed under any circumstance by inserting the language prohibited uses will not be allowed under any circumstance in Section 6.4 F3B and Section 6.4 G3C. We also made it standard in both the tables and the sections languages. We replaced the term permitted that was used before by permissible, which is the term that we use along the rest of the Land Development Code. There is no budget impact arising from the adoption of Ordinance number 1556. And as to the strategic impact, we consider that the recommended change in the City of Oviedo Land Development Code reinforces the principles established by the Downtown Master Plan and then therefore reinforces the community character strategic focus area established by the 2011 updated strategic plan for the City of Oviedo. It is recommended that the Planning, Zoning and Appeals Board recommend adoption of Ordinance number 1556. And just, I would like to add that DRC reviewed Ordinance 1556 last week on November 8th and recommended its approval with no conditions. And the City Council will consider Ordinance 1556 on November 19th. It will be the first reading and public hearing, and December 3rd, City Council adoption public hearing. And with that, I end my presentation and I'm ready for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Well, you guys are quiet tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is a public hearing item, so we'll open it up for a public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. What's the board's pleasure?
Madam Madam Chair.
Mr. Sheridan.
Let's go one last time. I'd like to make a recommendation to adopt ordinance number 1556 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Gillis. Is there any discussion?
I have a question on the, or discussion on the drive-through and drive-in facilities of any use. I mean, before it seemed like that those were going to be on a case-by-case basis, and now they're just eliminating them completely. I don't know if, I don't necessarily agree with prohibiting them completely.
I can tell you from sitting on all of the committees that I have for the downtown, drive-in facilities were never considered. It's just that the wording was not real clear that they were not allowed, and this is to clear up that ambiguity.
Even on some of the corner lots, for instance, like a Starbucks, I mean, nothing.
For the downtown,
I know it was discussed, it had been discussed before that, it seemed like it was going to be on a case-by-case, and there may be some room for that a little bit.
it was never considered by any of the downtown committees that I sat on that it would be permitted at all.
Okay.
Perhaps staff can add something to that.
No, I agree. It does conflict with the intent of the downtown master plan. And as Chairman Moore mentioned, during those meetings, drive-throughs were never permissible, at least during those, I can't remember how many meetings, there were numerous meetings, and I believe it was their understanding that drive-throughs were not permissible. And in the downtown is not a place for, when you want to have a vibrant downtown, drive-throughs are just not compatible with your downtown environment. Most of the time you want your downtown to be walkable, and when you have your drive-throughs, a lot of times they want parking on all sides of the building, and they want their drive-through in the front of the building, where we want, and the intent of the downtown is to push the buildings closer to the road so that it's pedestrian friendly. So it's never been the intent of the committee or the downtown master plan.
When you think of the difference of an area like Winter Springs, Town Center has some drive-throughs through it, as opposed to perhaps Winter Park Village, where it doesn't. And it makes it more of a sense of place. You're going there to be there, to stay there, as opposed just to go pick something up and leave. Mm-hmm. And that was always the wording that was used on all of the committees, was to create a sense of place, a place that somebody would go and stay for a while.
Okay.
So that's why the committees never thought of having drive-throughs in it.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? What's the board's, we've got the motion on the table. Okay. We'll call the motion for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This item will be considered by City Council November 19th, 2012 at 6:30 in these chambers. We don't have any discussion items on the agenda. Does anyone have anything? Okay, the next item is our future meeting dates. November 27th, December 11th, and January 8th. Do we know if these or second meeting in November and the December meeting, are those?
Currently, we have nothing scheduled for those meetings.
Okay, thank you. Seeing nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Sharon. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We stand adjourned.